There is a deep, a profound spirit of unforgiveness in the black community over slavery and Jim Crow. It is as if it just ended yesterday in the minds of many. And the moment you start talking about race, it comes up. We can't seem to get past it. And many of us are not preaching forgiveness and reconciliation. And what I try to do, and what Bishop Harry Jackson just said is absolutely true, but you can't even get there if people think, what are you all up to? And the man's out to get me. Now, you know, and there's no trust, there's no basis for communication. And what I say to people is you've got to put America in the context, and this is the analogy I've used. Every time a black guy commits some crime, one of the first things we talk about is, wow, look at the poverty, look at the lack of a father in the home, and we try to put in context his behavior. But we don't ever try to put in context what happened in America. We don't try to put in context and say, well, what was the nature of the age? What was George Washington raised like? You know, they were slave owners. And we don't ask, well, wait a minute, if you from a child, you're taught this is the way of the world, this is the way God intended, we ought to be amazed that some of them were able to say, wait a minute, something's wrong with this. So we don't try to put this in context, and the church is where that ought to happen so that we can begin to look at one another as brothers and sisters in Christ and help lead our country past this stuff as opposed to continuing to wallow in it. When you add, James, I'll stop here, but when you add a young man growing up in a home without a father, and I lived in a foster home for the first 10 years of my life, and I tell people I've been on both sides of it. I was bitter, I was angry, my attitude was, my father's not here to tell me what to do, you're not telling me what to do. You add to that somebody speaking into their ear, you know, the white people have done, look, they held us in slavery, look at Jim Crow. And then you spin a myth that police are out hunting down black men, killing them intentionally, and then going home, you know, being paid to go home and relax for a few weeks. You got a formula where it becomes very, very difficult to even get to the economic, political, policy issues that we can begin to address with people. So please pray for forgiveness in the black community to take root.
Umbrella. She's up. Level of shit you can't even understand.
What is good, my people? We are live back again with another episode of The Forecast. So down in Florida, a brother by the name of Gregory Hill Jr., who was in his own house listening to music when he was shot and killed by police in his own garage. So let's see how somebody minding their own business in their own house ended up getting shot and killed by the police.
We now know the name of the Fort Pierce man killed in a standoff with St. Lucie County Sheriff's deputies. News Channel 5's John Shaman is live in Fort Pierce right now, where the sheriff just wrapped up the news conference a short time ago. John?
Well, the sheriff expressing his condolences to the family of 30-year-old Gregory Hill Jr., the victim in this case. There was a lot of activity outside of Hill's home today on Avenue Q. Detectives still scouring the scene looking for additional evidence. Now, the confrontation that led up to this on Tuesday began after a call came in that there was loud and obscene music coming from Hill's home. Two deputies arrived who tried making contact with Hill. Now, when Hill manually opened his garage door, the detectives say that he had a gun and raised it at deputies as he tried to then shut the garage manually. The sheriff says that is when deputies fired.
The whole issue is...
I'll never see him again.
Oh, come on.
Monique Davis is talking about her fiancé, Gregory Hill Jr.
I'm supposed to be planning a wedding. You're not supposed to be planning a funeral. This is going to be so hard.
Hill was shot and killed inside his garage Tuesday afternoon by a St. Lucie County Sheriff's deputy who was responding to a noise complaint. Sheriff Ken Mascara says when deputies went to the home, Hill opened the garage door and they noticed he was pointing a semi-automatic handgun at them.
He had the gun in the right hand. He reached up with his left hand and pulled the garage door down.
They said it was a threat for their life. Where is the threat if you got to shoot a man through the garage door?
All I know is the deputy on scene reported that gun came to my direction, and these deputies are trained not to take a bullet, to respond to a bullet. When they fear for their lives, they respond.
Davis says she's having a difficult time explaining what happened to their small children. She says one of her daughters was right across the street standing outside her school when the shooting happened.
My 9-year-old saw when Daddy let the garage down and everything. So there's something wrong. My 9-year-old, she have to live with this also.
And I would ask that the community just stay calm. We're still investigating this. Any homeowner can have a gun in their home. That is true. However, when law enforcement arrives at your home doing a lawful duty, and you're confronted with law enforcement and they give you an order to drop that gun, the last thing anyone should do is raise that gun.
Why would you come to a call that says loud music and it turns into a deadly, just a killing?
Didn't know if Hill was still alive inside. The sheriff said some of Hill's family told them that he was alive but scared to come out. A gun was found by Hill's body that was just inside the garage. Now, the sheriff did tell us the two deputies who were involved in the shooting, Christopher Newman, who had just joined the sheriff's office last October but had spent a decade with the Fort Pierce Police Department. He has no disciplinary actions prior. And the other deputy involved, Edward Lopez, who served in several capacities in the sheriff's office since 2004. He has one minor reprimand in his file, both men on administrative leave tonight. An autopsy scheduled on Hill's body tomorrow. The sheriff would not say who may have fired the deadly shots or how many times Hill was hit.
So this brother Gregory Hill Jr. was in his own house listening to music when some random woman, and my guess she was a white woman, heard the music and claimed she took offense. So she called the police on his brother to make a noise complaint. Now, mind you, in that city, the law says the first time is a warning, the second time is a citation, and the third time is a misdemeanor. Now, none of those punishments include the death penalty, but this was the first complaint that he had. So Deputy Christopher Newman and his partner Edward Lopez were the cops that responded, and within 2 minutes, this brother was shot dead in his own home. Now, the police claim this brother opened the garage door and then pulled a gun on the cops. So he was pointing an unloaded gun at the cops, and the sheriff, Ken Mascara, said that with the gun in one hand, he began to shut the garage door with the other hand. So the deputy Christopher Newman feared for his life so much that he had to fire 4 shots through the garage door. 2 hit this brother in the chest and 1 hit him in the head. I guess these cops had x-ray vision. They could see him pointing the gun through the door. Then after they shoot him and he's already dead, they decided to call the SWAT team and snipers for backup. Then they finally kicked the door in and sprayed so much tear gas they couldn't even live in the house anymore. And they probably went in there and handcuffed his body, and they said they found an unloaded gun in his back pocket. So I guess after he got shot in the head, before he died, he put his gun back in his back pocket. But despite the Second Amendment, and Florida being the stand your ground law state that it is, and despite the affiliation these police organizations have with the NRA, the police justified themselves because this brother had a gun. They found themselves innocent and decided not to press charges.
4 years later, the family of Gregory Hill is still reeling from the police-involved shooting that ended his life.
It's Father's Day. They got to go out to the graveyard. They'll see their father because their father was murdered.
In January 2014, 2 Florida sheriff's deputies responded to Hill's home after a noise complaint. The officers claim Hill threatened them with a gun as he closed his garage door. Sheriff's Deputy Christopher Newman opened fire, striking Hill 3 times.
They're taught as if their life is in danger, they could use deadly force to counter that danger.
Tests showed Hill's blood alcohol content was 5 times the legal driving limit, and an unloaded gun was found in his back pocket. Hill's family filed a wrongful death suit against the sheriff's office. The jury found Hill 99% responsible for his own death and awarded his family $4, $1 for funeral expenses and $1 for each of his 3 children.
Once I heard the amount, slap in the face.
In a statement, the sheriff's office said Deputy Newman made the best decision he could for the safety of his partner, himself, and the public, given the circumstances he faced. Hill's mother says for his family, the pain still feels fresh.
I heard but at least I don't live part of my life. These kids haven't even begun to live their life.
After 10 hours, a jury found that Deputy Christopher Newman wasn't liable for the death of Gregory Hill Jr. at all. They said the sheriff, Ken Mascara, was 1% liable, and that this brother Gregory Hill Jr. was 99% responsible for his own death. He didn't call the police, he didn't break any laws. He wasn't the one that shot through a garage door. But because he was drunk in his own home, listening to music that offended some white woman, that makes him responsible for being shot in the head. Then on top of that, just to rub it in their face and add insult to injury, the jury awarded his family 4 cents just to send a message.
4 cents. That's the compensation the Florida jury awarded to the family of a black man fatally shot by police officers. Seems he was killed in his own garage 4 years ago when officers were investigating a complaint about loud music. According to court documents, the jury established that the officer involved in the shooting was only just slightly negligent. They awarded the family $1 for funeral expenses and furthermore $1 for each of the children. The hearing also found that the officer was only 1% at fault of death, and compensation was then reduced to just 4 cents. There's more. It was also established that the fatally shot man was intoxicated and that sum could be reduced to 0. Here's Gregory Hill, part of his family. He was father of 3. He was fatally shot then 3 times through a garage door by police in 2014. Police claim he was holding a gun. It was later found to be unloaded. The family lawyer says this is a senseless case of police misconduct.
We were in shock as lawyers because I've never seen or heard anything like this. We're not supposed to be punished like that. His fiance walked out of the courtroom when it happened. You have to tell 3 children, Destiny, Ariana, and Gregory III, that their pain and suffering, their loss of a father, is only worth a penny. It's just a preposterous story of law enforcement gone wrong, that here you have a dead man laying there and police think he's barricaded in. He was listening to loud music that had the F word in it, okay? And that's what police came to see, to investigate, and it's not even illegal. It's something that police knock on your door and generally tell you to turn it down.
The family launched a fundraising page to raise money for the children. They've already received more than $30,000. Their lawyer again says that will continue as well, that they'll continue with their battle to try and find some sort of justice after all this time.
100% goes to the children and the rehabilitation of their family home because it was also destroyed by tear gas. We don't understand 99% and 1%. In America, we have the Second Amendment. You know, some people love it, some people hate it, but you're legally allowed to possess a firearm, and you're legally allowed to open the door with a firearm. And we're going to take it all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court if we have to. It's that important because it's a precedent of law enforcement. If you're doing nothing illegal, shouldn't be able to shoot you through your closed garage door. It's preposterous.
So at first the jury awarded his family $4, $1 for his funeral and $1 for each of his children. Then the jury came back and reduced it from $4 to 4 cents. So each one of his kids would get 1 cent apiece for their father's death. And then they came back again and reduced it from 4 cents to nothing because they say he was drunk. They said he was 0.4 over the driving limit, which is why he was in his own house, not driving. So even though they wanted to send a message and give them a penny, at the end of the day, they couldn't even take 1% of accountability. And hoping when they investigate themselves, they're going to hold themselves accountable and punish themselves. But we'll be waiting for a long time for that to happen. We shouldn't be arguing with people over the deaths of our brothers and sisters. When we talk about our blood being shed, they try to make it into a debate. Then they turn around and pick our leaders for us and put them in positions to push their agenda. And then bring in a non-black person to quote-unquote fight for our rights. But getting one person released out of prison is not quite prison reform. But they will never actually reform prison, not in our favor anyway. They have made a countless amount of money over the centuries based off the prison industry alone. But nobody is going to get us out of this situation but ourselves. Nobody's going to be held accountable for our blood if we don't hold them accountable ourselves. So we can continue to let them come into our homes, come into our personal space, violate us, and make money and benefit off of our destruction. Or we could put aside our differences and our beliefs and whatever else is holding us back to do what we got to do. I'm sure we can all agree we're tired of seeing our blood be spilled. We're tired of seeing our children being harmed. But until we can respond with more urgency than they do to protect ourselves, then the situation will continue to happen.
$4. That's the amount a civil jury decided to award a Fort Pierce family after a man was shot and killed by a St. Lucie County deputy.
Only on 5 tonight, the man's fiance is speaking to our Megan McRoberts in a case now gaining national attention.
Well, that $4 was awarded to the family for funeral expenses and for pain and suffering after family members sued the sheriff's office for the deadly shooting. Now family members are calling that settlement a slap in the face. A banner still hangs on this Fort Pierce home with Greg Hill Jr.'s picture. It's where he lost his life in 2014.
Every police car in this county there.
Hill's fiance, Terica Davis, remembers learning a deputy opened fire, killing Hill. It all stemmed from a noise complaint from a mom across the street. Investigators said Deputy Christopher Newman told them he shot at Hill multiple times after seeing a gun when Hill partially opened, then closed his garage door. Newman fired through that door, killing Hill.
I just knew my world was over.
An attorney representing Hill's family said evidence suggested the unloaded gun never left Hill's back pocket. Still, a jury decided the deputy's actions were justified.
I don't believe he was tend to be any threat towards those officers, because this is a guy that's getting married in 2 months. This is a guy that knows his daughter is across the street at the school.
Deputies said Hill was heavily intoxicated. Hill's family sued the sheriff's office for wrongful death and excessive force, among other complaints. But after listening to dozens of witnesses, a jury awarded the family $4. The jury said Hill, a father of 3, was 99% responsible for his own death.
Slap in the face. Like, how can you value someone's life off $4? How can you give $1 to each child for pain and suffering?
Sheriff Ken Mascara said in a statement, quote, Newman was placed in a very difficult situation, and like so many fellow law enforcement officers must do every day, he made the best decision he could for the safety of his partner, himself, and the public, given the circumstances he faced. And Hill's family members said that the funeral expenses exceeded $10,000. They will be appealing this ruling.
As the verdict approaches for Darren Wilson, the Ferguson, Missouri police officer who shot and killed 18-year-old Michael Brown, the city continues to protest what they argue to be an unfair, trigger-happy police force and a war zone reaction to civilian protests. Unfortunately, this is far from the first time we've heard this story in America. Los Angeles, 1991. Rodney King, a 25-year-old black man, refuses to pull over after he's flagged for speeding. After a high-speed chase, 4 police officers surround him and severely beat him. Security footage sparks mass public outrage. Despite that, all 4 officers are acquitted of excessive force charges, and residents riot in South Central LA, causing millions of dollars in damage, thousands of injuries, and 53 deaths. New York, 2006. Sean Bell is drunk at his bachelor party. After an altercation outside a nightclub is misinterpreted by police, Bell and 2 friends are shot 50 times, killing Bell and severely injuring the others.
Oh, Sean Bell, NYPD,
Mass protests follow, and despite outcry, all officers tried for the shooting are acquitted. San Francisco, 2009. Oscar Grant is involved in a drunk scuffle on a BART train late on New Year's night. Police respond and detain Grant and several friends. An unarmed Grant resists his subduer, despite being kept prone. An officer on the scene shoots him in the back, in front of dozens of witnesses, some of whom are videotaping the incident. Grant dies in the hospital a few hours later. The community immediately galvanizes to demonstrate against the police's conduct. The officer serves 2 years in prison and is now out on parole. The events inspired the 2013 film Fruitvale Station. Sanford, Florida, 2012. 17-year-old Trayvon Martin is walking home from a convenience store. Neighborhood watch coordinator George Zimmerman believes Martin looks suspicious. After he calls the police, Zimmerman approaches Martin. The two struggle, and Zimmerman fatally shoots and kills the unarmed teenager. Protests spread across the country, with figures like Al Sharpton and President Obama lending their voices in disdain for Florida's Stand Your Ground laws, which to this date have not been changed.
I just ask people to consider, if Trayvon Martin was of age and armed, could he have stood his ground on that sidewalk?
Ferguson, Missouri, 2014. Michael Brown and a friend are walking in the middle of the street. Officer Darren Wilson orders Brown and his friend off the street. A struggle ensues through the officer's truck's window, and a gunshot sends Brown running. Wilson pursues and shoots Brown 6 times. Protests, both violent and peaceful, erupt in Ferguson. Eventually, police deploy in military fashion, using non-lethal beanbag rounds to control protests and injuring several children in the process. Federal and state governments decide to take a second look at the over-militarization of police. Brown's death and the resulting chaos in Ferguson are milestones in the momentum these cases have gained. Outcry is louder on both sides, and while the government pledges to consider reform to police policy and state law, it seems like these stories have become depressingly predictable.
If a white male teen was involved in the same kind of scenario, that from top to bottom, both the outcome and the aftermath might have been different.
How many more times can the country withstand a tragic shooting, a muddy trial, and the resulting chaos?
The neighbor literally just came outside while I was going in to do my inspection on the house and asked me, "What are you doing here?" And I told her, "Hey, I'm an investor. Here's my sign." I always put a bandit sign out in front of a vacant house so people know that I'm an investor and that I'm going in the house. And she said, "No, why don't you just leave? Get out the neighborhood." I was like, "Well, hold on, ma'am. I'm here to do my inspection. Let me do my job." So then she threatened to call the police on me. Hey, how you doing?
Even if you are inside the residence,
right,
and you got a perceived burglary, unless I've got a victim and owner,
exactly,
I can't prosecute.
Okay, now do you mind telling her that, because I really do not want her coming behind me. I honestly feel threatened, and if it's a way that I can do this, I would like to file a complaint against her because there was no reason for her to do that.
Well, what did she do?
She came out threatening to call the police on me. She was screaming and shouting. I didn't do anything. All I'm trying to do is get in and get my pictures. I mean, that's pretty much it.
About the best I can do on that is I can notate the complaint.
Okay. I would definitely like to do that.
Unless she threatens you or attacks you, I can't.
Okay, well, yeah, that's fine. But in that case, that's fine. I just don't want to be harassed while I'm doing my inspection.
You're going to let him do what he's going to do. I know, you tried. Listen to me. If you tried to do anything to stop him, I'm going to take you to jail.
Why would you do to stop him? He's got all the correct paperwork, right? Hurry up, do it, and get out. No.
I got it. Appreciate it.
You take his time.
No, he can take all day.
I can take all day, y'all.
He can do it all night. It doesn't matter.
They can't rush me.
He's in control. So
I'm in control.
He's got a contract. So that is what it is.
All right, guys, we finna go in. Does anybody mind staying here for 5 minutes?
You keep the camera rolling. But,
okay.
If you have any problems with her, what I want you to do is call me back over here.
I'm gonna call you as soon as I have a problem with her.
She will go to jail today.
As soon as I have a problem with you, going to jail. You heard him? Just goes to show you guys that this type of stuff is still going on. I mean, you know why the lady called the police on me. By no means do I look threatening. I keep my business cards on me. I keep my contracts on me. I keep signs on me just so people will know, hey, I'm here to look at a house. But at the end of the day, she just did not want me in her neighborhood. So it got to the point where she started to talk bad to the policemen and tell them that they weren't doing their job because they let me enter into the house. But keep in mind, I had the actual owner on the phone talking to the police, letting them know, like, hey, he's fine. He's over there to check out my house. He's interested in buying it. And she heard the owner on the phone and was screaming, "You want him in your house? Why do you want him in your house?" So come on, guys, we know what that's all about. But at the end of the day, she looked real dumb. So I'm going home happy. The police, they were on my side. I told them, hey, stay here, protect me, because she's crazy. If she comes in after me, I don't know if I'm going to make it out alive. But to be honest, I'm just happy to be going home now. I'm going to go home and see my wife. I'm about to hug her.
It shows your ignorance.
The black nigger.
Yeah, black nigger, all that.
Black nigger.
Goodbye. Goodbye. That don't hurt me neither, sweetheart. That just shows your ignorance. That name don't bother me.
Come on.
It shows your ignorance.
Black
nigger. Yeah, black nigger. Black nigger. Don't bother us. Black bitch.
Go back in the pool.
Bye. No. They're leaving. Call me out of my name and you gonna say get back in the pool?
Next time, don't come to Florida.
Don't touch my niece. Don't
Get your hands off of her. Get your hands off of her.
Don't touch my niece. Goodbye.
That's going to be assault.
Goodbye.
Or of course you haven't graduated and you don't know the Constitution of the United States and what it says.
Of what? That you could just walk around calling somebody a nigger?
Yes,
and
it's called free speech in America. Right to free speech. Look it up.
Fucked up.
They asked him to get down, he wouldn't get down.
My neck! Put your hands up!
He got a spine injury!
My neck! My neck! Relax! My neck!
Why are you punching him? Why are you punching him? Well, he got a spine injury! Police, he got a spine injury! I'm telling you, he got a spine injury! You hate that?
My neck! My neck! You're under arrest!
He has a spine injury!
My neck! Put your hands
behind
my neck!
He can't! I'm telling you, he got a fucking spine injury!
Sir, put your hands behind your back!
They ain't even listening. I'm glad I'm getting this on video.
Put this arm behind your back!
He has a spine injury. I'm telling you, he can't. I done told you that 20 times. No, you heard me. I told you he had a spine injury.
Take this.
He has a spine injury.
Minnie, take this.
I got it all on tape.
Take this.
That guy kept punching him. I repeated over and over and over again. How the fuck he gonna put his hand behind his back when I'm constantly telling you this?
I have a spine and I have a fucking spine injury. You should have listened. Man, what the fuck you mean? You should have put your hands on me. I didn't resist. I didn't resist. Yes, you did. I didn't resist. No, it's okay. I'm sorry. I gotta go attention. I can't put my hands on my fucking back, bitch.
Ryan, you need to shut up.
I'll go get my medical records. You were asked several times. Okay. Put your hand behind your back now, man. Watch it. Behind your back.
Yep, it's 4 people taping. Somebody in the house taping too.
I have a fucking spine injury. Now you're under arrest. Dude, you're fighting. Stop tensing up.
He did not assault y'all.
I have a fucking spine injury.
Oh my God, look how they pulling his arms. Oh my God, look how they pulling his arms.
He's on some.
No, he ain't on nothing. He ain't on nothing. But y'all want to think that he's not on anything.
Relax. Relax.
You getting all this?
There's no black police officers. That's crazy.
You got your foot on his neck. He has a spine injury. He just had surgery. No, I saw he done that on purpose. And my camera telling it all.
You guys calm down. You need to calm down. I'm pressing charges. But I'm fucking hurt, man. Okay, then calm down. Calm down. I'm fucking hurt. Listen to me. Calm down. I'm hurt, man.
Ryan, shut up.
Oh, man, I gotta go to the doctor.
Get your foot off his neck. He has a spine injury.
I'm pressing charges.
He has a spine injury. He's got a
He should cooperate.
But you doing that over and over, and I kind of told you he had a spine injury. Y'all trying to kill him. Y'all trying to kill him. No, it's all on camera. It's all on camera.
All right, and we back on the forecast. So out in Chicago, a 10-year-old boy who was just playing in his grandparents' yard, when Chicago police handcuffed him and detained him for no particular reason. So let's go back and see what happened with this young 10-year-old brother and why police decided to handcuff and detain him.
That ain't got no guy.
That's our kid.
Then why you asking for the gun if we tell you your kid, man?
Unbelievable.
Once we figure this out.
Unbelievable. He's a kid. They making him pee on himself and all of that. He's scared.
Listen, we gotta call the person with a gun, a juvenile, all blue. We get out the car, he starts running. That's why he's in handcuffs.
They scared. Y'all killed his cousin. Why not wrong? They all. I understand. Don't you know? Oh my God.
That ain't got no guy.
I wonder why there's this fear of police from people and why there's tension between the black community and police. It's because of videos like this, a 10-year-old handcuffed because he fit the description. Take a look for yourself at this video. It's going all around the country right now, people talking about it. Chicago police say they got a report that someone in the area was carrying a gun. Officers say Michael Thomas Jr. ran away when he was approached by police. The video shows the boy sitting on the police car with his hands cuffed behind his back. He's so scared in the video, he even starts peeing on himself. You can also see and hear the family members gathering around. They're trying to convince the officers they have the wrong person. 15 minutes later, police let him go. CPD Superintendent Eddie Johnson, he's now talking about this. He's defending his officers, saying they followed all rules and protocols. He wants the public to keep in mind it's difficult to tell right off the bat the age of someone they're trying to get, and he claims he was handcuffed for safety reasons, but he says he feels for the family and wants to investigate to make sure things were done properly. This comes off a turbulent week when there was a officer-involved shooting just the other day, and you know, you hear police community relations mentioned as sort of a buzzword of sorts. This kind of underscoring why it's so important the two come together, because videos like this really keeping that divide even wider and putting people deeper into their own camp.
So this 10-year-old young brother was at his grandparents' house outside playing when the police approached him, and they claimed it was mistaken identity. In one report, they said they were looking for an escaped juvenile who was armed. But then, in another report, they said they got a call about an armed juvenile. Now, this 10-year-old who doesn't have a gun and who was just outside minding his own business, they said he fit the description, and when they tried to approach him, he took off running. And I don't blame him. Even a 10-year-old kid can see what's going on right now. Now, luckily, there were people there that made sure it didn't go past that point, and they were able to get it on video. But of course, the police superintendent, Eddie Johnson, already had his cape on and was out there defending the cops. He said they didn't do anything wrong and they follow all the rules and protocol.
Outrage tonight over the video that you're watching right now. It shows police officers handcuff a 10-year-old boy. His family says it was a case of mistaken identity and they want action. Now the police department responds. NBC5's Regina Waldrop is on the story. She is live with the latest. Regina.
Now, Allison, Michael tells me he is a good kid. He says he is into math and into baseball, and he says he tried several times to tell police they had the wrong person, but they just wouldn't listen.
That's our kid.
The video is still hard for Star Ramsey to watch.
Just to hear it all, because I wasn't here.
In it, you see her young son, 10-year-old Michael, a fourth grader, handcuffed and standing in front of a squad car.
Unbelievable, he's a kid.
I need to apologize, and he's going to be scared for the rest of his life now.
The incident happened last week while Michael was at his grandmother's house. Where did this happen at?
Right here.
Michael says officers told him they were looking for a young black male with a gun, and he fit the description.
They put me in handcuffs. I was scared, I was crying, and I had used it on myself. And then that's when they told me I escaped from juvenile and I had a gun. I said I didn't escape from juvenile and I didn't have a gun on me.
Michael's grandmother says officers told her they were looking for a teenager, not a 10-year-old.
I even searched my own grandson. I said he don't have anything. He should have never been put in no handcuff.
After about 15 minutes, officers released Michael. He says he'll never forget this run-in with Chicago police.
They had handcuffed the wrong person.
Anything can happen. We might need him to call the police, but he's going to be too afraid to even call.
And tonight, police tell us this was a difficult situation. They also say that Michael did run from officers when they approached him, and they also tell us that they have been in contact with his family.
The police superintendent, Eddie Johnson, said they got a call about a young man passing out a gun, and this young brother fit this infamous description. Now, I don't know what they mean by a young man was passing out a gun, but he said, keep in mind, it's difficult for cops to tell if you're 10 years old, so they handcuffed him just to be safe. And we all know they confuse our 10-year-olds with 40-year-olds. And we all look the same and fit the same vague description. But the police said they will investigate themselves. But from all the caping they've been doing already, we can tell what the results are going to be. And we shouldn't be surprised when we find out the results, because we're still dependent on them to investigate themselves. And we don't have the power to punish people for harming our children. But until we respond with that urgency, they're going to continue to harm our children and get rewarded for it. But so many of us are searching for an identity, and I understand our identity has been thoroughly stripped from us. And we're searching for every loophole, for any way to get away from white supremacy besides doing what we know we have to do. Now, it's no offense to anybody's beliefs, but not calling ourselves black or calling ourselves any particular name isn't going to change our circumstances. They don't hate the word black. It is us as a people that is being oppressed regardless of what we call ourselves. A lot of us think claiming a certain nationality will save us, will help us in some way. But at the end of the day, when you're subject to their laws and you're in their courts, they're whatever they want to call you. White supremacy doesn't care if you call yourself a Moorish sovereign citizen. They don't follow their own rules. They change the rules as they go. And the Moors are right there on the terrorist list with everybody else.
You may not have heard of the Moorish Nationals, but police have members claim to follow Moorish science. It comes from a black religious group that's been around for nearly a century. Most of its members obey the law, but not everyone. Chip Reed looks at how some use their religion to justify the crime.
This 35,000 square foot mansion in an exclusive corner of Bethesda, Maryland, has 12 bedrooms, 17 bathrooms, and trees planted by President Clinton and Vice President Gore. On the market for nearly $6 million, it's not exactly a steal. So imagine real estate agent Jordan Feinberg's surprise when he learned someone had moved into the vacant property.
The owner calls me again and says, the neighbor called, there are people inside the house, claiming they own the house. And I'm like, what?
Lamont Butler, a.k.a. Lamont Maurice L., claimed the mansion for himself. He even provided documents issued by the so-called Moorish National Republic to back it up.
It's a burglary in the purest sense.
Across the country, Butler and many other self-styled Moorish nationals have laid claim to property and status they say is lawfully theirs because their ancestors were here first. In Memphis, Tennessee, Tabitha Gentry staked a claim on this $3 million foreclosed home using heavy chains. Charged with trespassing, burglary, and theft, Gentry, who prefers the name Abka Ray Bey, says as a citizen of the Moorish American National Republic, that land is her land. And this man was arrested by police in Fayetteville, North Carolina, for interfering with a stolen car investigation. But his wife claims the arrest was illegal because he is a member of the Moorish nation.
He has diplomatic immunity. Why are y'all doing this?
Moors trace their beliefs to Noble Drew Ali, who founded the Moorish Science Temple in Chicago in 1925. With tens of thousands of followers, the faith borrows heavily from Islam. It also teaches that all black Americans are Moorish Americans, descendants of an ancient Moroccan global empire, an idea some followers have taken one step further.
So you don't have to get a license plate or a driver's license. You can lay claim to property.
Spencer Dew, who studies the movement, says Moorish Americans have long taken pride in being American citizens, but as the group splintered over the decades, some offshoots abandoned that view.
But I also think we have some opportunistic individuals, some sort of lone wolf elements.
Jeff Fort is perhaps the most notorious movement member. The former leader of a violent Chicago street gang, he was convicted in 1987 of conspiring with Libya's Gaddafi regime to blow up U.S. government buildings.
It's kind of a public relations nightmare. The vast majority of Moorish communities in America are not involved in any of this sovereign citizen ideology, not involved in fraudulent behavior, not involved in criminal acts.
As for Butler, he eventually abandoned the Bethesda mansion, but he still faces charges of burglary, theft, and fraud. He's currently out on bond.
Now, we as a people have to understand, for them, it's not about fairness. It's not about justice. It's not about being right. They don't care what we believe in or what we identify as. We all get the same treatment, but we still argue amongst ourselves, and we've never been quite able to get over our tribal differences to do what we have to do. And Europeans, they have their tribalisms. Different European nations may fight with each other, but at the end of the day, they'll put aside their differences for their whiteness. They'll do what they have to do to maintain their position. White people don't get their power from what they classify themselves. They get their power from their weapons. America gets its power because they have nuclear weapons and they don't allow anybody else to have nuclear weapons. White America said, give me liberty or give me death. But we as a people have been so mentally destroyed, and our history has been destroyed. Our traditions, our practices, all have been destroyed, our languages. And we all suffer from some level of Stockholm Syndrome. But we spend so much time arguing about the past that has been taken from us and destroyed that we don't pay attention to the history that we do know, that we do have access to. If we paid attention to the blueprint our ancestors left us just here in America, it would solve a lot of the problems that we have today. Like how they were able to build their own economy. We'll be in a lot better position than we are right now. But at the end of the day, we're going to have to learn how to protect ourselves. Because whatever we do build, they will come to try to destroy it. We know our ancestors did great things in the past, regardless of what your beliefs are. But it's time for our generation to leave our stamp on the world and put the next generation in a better position, not only to be able to protect themselves, but to be able to thrive in the world. But as long as we keep being divided and conquered, then this stuff is going to keep happening to our children, and all we could do is beg and cry and plead and hope that we get justice. But if we don't protect ourselves, protect our elderly, and protect our children, then nobody will.
I got a bad hair day. Can you fix it for me?
8-year-old Jemiah Rickman is at home today because she doesn't want to go back to Lovejoy Elementary School in Alton after what happened there yesterday.
It was a bad day.
Nehemiah Keaton is Jemiah's uncle and guardian. He says Rickman is autistic and suffers from separation anxiety and depression. Yesterday morning, he got a phone call from the school to pick her up because she was having a tantrum, something he says has happened several times before. He was on his way when he got a phone call from police saying Rickman was in custody.
When I get to the police station to pick her up, her eyes were so swollen from her just crying and crying and crying.
Where were you handcuffed?
On my arms and feet, and they put a Velcro around my waist.
Officials with the Alton School District say they cannot comment on the specific case because of the Illinois Student Records Act, but say when dealing with situations like this, first the school resource officer gets involved, then a parent is contacted. If the parent cannot come, that's when they contact police.
Every time they have ever called me, I have always responded. That's why I did not understand why did they have to go to that extreme to dial 911. They knew I was coming.
Keaton says he's outraged.
She was shackled. I mean, this is a 7-year-old, 8. I'm barely made 8. I mean, and to me, I feel like that was above and beyond.
Do you think the officer that responded to this particular case acted accordingly?
Absolutely.
Captain Scott Waldrop says Alton police officers use great caution before restraining a child, but in this case, he says the officer had no choice.
It was absolutely necessary to protect that child by restraining that child.
I'm hoping that it won't happen to nobody else.
Parents of a 6-year-old girl handcuffed and taken to the police department after a tantrum at school speak out. They want procedures changed by the Baldwin County school system and Milledgeville police so this does not happen again to another child. Fox 5's Angelique Proctor is live in southwest Atlanta with the story. Angelique, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Buck. You know, we just wrapped up with a news conference here minutes ago. Celicius Johnson's parents are telling me that the Baldwin County school system still has not contacted them about this entire episode since it happened on Monday. The parents say they are so disturbed by what happened that they are not only withdrawing her, but her 9-year-old sister from the school system as well. Now, a police report indicates that this 6-year-old pushed other children and was throwing furniture around, trying to run away from Creekside Elementary School on Monday. That is when the school system called police. Now, Celicia's parents and the National Action Network say the school and the police overreacted by treating this child like a criminal. They say she will now need counseling.
Every time she see a police officer, she think they're coming to get her. She can't sleep well, and I can't sleep well thinking about it. And every time she see an officer, she think they're coming to get her.
Has she had nightmares?
Yes.
The principal said she was going to call the police. Then, why did she call the police? I'm not even doing that thing.
Did you ask her to call your mommy? What happened? What did she say?
She said no. She won't put me in the room by myself.
Tell us about the handcuffs. What did they do to your hands?
They hurt me.
The little girl recounted what happened to her on Monday. Now, the school system said they tried to call the parents a number of times. The parent says that's what they would have preferred, that they be contacted first, that they deal with their own child. They say they had active phones. They never heard from the school system. They even questioned whether the school system called them at all. And it was the police department that finally got in touch with this child's aunt, picked her up from police headquarters.
Do not touch me. Grab my, do not touch me. Grab my stuff. Don't touch me. Don't touch me. Don't touch me.
You're under arrest.
I am not. Excuse me. I am not under arrest. I am not under arrest. This is, excuse me. No. Excuse me. No. Excuse me. Geronimo Bay. I came into a
Geronimo Bay is here on behalf of the Murphy matter.
And he, excuse me. We came in special appearance on the Murphy matter. And he is attempting.
Judge has abandoned ship.
Judge has abandoned ship. Excuse me. Judge has
no
abandoned
warrant.
ship. That we are here on special appropriate persona on the Murphy matter.
And he has
abandoned ship. Do not.
He has proof that he is not Andre Murphy.
Do not touch him.
He's not Andre. He's not Andre Murphy. Yep. I need badge numbers and everything. I got him. Hey, Dre, Geronimo, don't resist. Geronimo, don't resist.
I'm not. Give me your hand. I'm not resisting. Give me your hand. I'm not resisting.
He's not resisting. That's not mine. It's not your property to touch, and I can definitely videotape.
He has the choke move on me.
Choke move. He's choking him.
I can't breathe.
Choking him. Which officer? Which policy enforcer? Don't touch me. Y'all have your badge. I will have your badge. I am able to record it. It's being recorded. Anybody touch me? I am a private American national. I'm a private American national. You're on my property. This courtroom is on my property. Everybody better have a silver bond.
I'm not Mr. Brown. I'm not Mr. Brown. I'm JL.
You're JL.
Yes. You know Article 15 Declaration of Rights of Indigenous People?
Sir, open the door. Or
Article 15 Declaration of Human Rights?
Open the door, let me talk to you. I'm with the U.S. Marshal's office.
I understand. I'm talking to you right now.
Open the door, let me talk to you.
Sir, my children right here, I can talk to you just fine.
I'm asking you to open the door so I can talk to you.
And I'm letting you know right now. We're going to speak about international law. Is that correct?
Give me the door, open it. I'm going to break the door down if you don't open it. I have a warrant here for your arrest.
Is that signed off by an Article 3 judge? Is that signed off by an Article 3 judge? Is that signed off by an Article 3 judge? Sir, is that signed off by an Article 3 judge? So it's not. So it's not signed off by an Article 3 judge. So it's not a real warrant. So you don't have a real warrant. So you don't have a real warrant. You broke my door? Here. Recording. Just keep it recorded. No fear. You like that door? You see the flag? Flag.
Open the door!
Cameron, I'm talking to you, please.
Open the door!
Please calm down. I'm speaking to you civilly.
Open the door. We're gonna open.
Do you have an Article 3 warrant? So you don't have a real warrant. You deprive me of my rights of color of law. You deprive my rights underneath color of law. You deprive me of my rights of color of law. You don't have a real warrant. Article 15, Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Everyone has a right to a nationality. Everyone has a right to a nationality. Everyone has a right to a nationality. No one shall be arbitrarily deprived of their nationality, nor the right to change their nationality. Article 15. Article 15. I'm watching my children.
Do you have anyone else to watch?
His wife is right here.
I'm watching my children. You're making entrances to my house. Article 15, Declaration of Human Rights.
Child, man.
No one shall be arbitrarily deprived of their nationality, nor the right to change their nationality. Hey! No one shall be arbitrarily give it to my wife. Give him to my wife. I'm not resisting and I do not consent. But no one shall be arbitrarily deprived of their nationality. Keep recording. You do this in front of my son. I'm being kidnapped. No one shall be arbitrarily deprived of their nationality.
Come here.
You force entrance into my home. You form entrance into my home. No one shall be arbitrarily deprived of their nationality. Color of law.
If you must express yourself in an appropriate venue, what you never do, no American should ever do, is go to a foreign country and use the platform that you have in a foreign country to criticize your own home. What's wrong with you? I mean, I guarantee you these players were raised better than that. They know better than that, but they've got caught up in this leftist politics nonsense, and they don't understand it. To me, it's traitorous. I know treason is a legal term, but it's treasonous in its import to go to another country and use the platform of another country to criticize your own. And that's what I think the Ravens and the Falcons did in Great Britain. You don't go to a foreign country and use that as an opportunity to denigrate your own country. But if you're going to do it, have the courage of your convictions and don't come back. Stay there if you think that's so great. Stay there. Now, I've said this jokingly, I've said this tongue-in-cheek, but I'm saying it now seriously. Those of you who won't stand for our flag, who won't stand for our national anthem, who hate our country so much, just leave. I mean, you sports figures have enough money. You could just leave. Renounce your American citizenship and go somewhere else. I mean, just live somewhere. Go find the country that you think is so just and live there and leave us alone.
I'm E.W. Jackson, candidate for U.S. Senate. Under President Trump, our economy is growing at over 3%. 3 million jobs created. Unemployment at 3.9%. Consumer confidence at an 18-year high. Lowest black unemployment rate ever. Bottom line, more money in Americans' pockets. Unlike Tim Kaine, I'll be a senator who stands with President Trump instead of against him. I'm E.W. Jackson, and I approve this message.
All right, and we back on the forecast. And I want to say RIP to the brother Gregory Hill Jr. And luckily, this young 10-year-old brother is alive and well. But at the end of the day, we're not going to be able to solve our problems by changing our name. We're not going to be able to solve our problem until we're ready to stand up and fight. As long as they can walk into our neighborhoods and snatch anybody up, an old woman, a little boy, a little girl, and all we can do is stand there and record and cry and beg the police not to hurt them. It'll be different if you walked into a neighborhood where people were armed and there to protect each other. And if we wanted to build an economy, to build schools, to create our own police, to create our own businesses so we can give ourselves jobs. We could easily nominate the most successful business people to be in charge of funding and helping grow black businesses. And we all can contribute to it. But at the end of the day, until we can figure out how to stop our blood from being shed and how to make sure people pay if they do shed our blood, let alone stopping them from benefiting from our bloodshed, then we're going to still be having this same conversation 50 years from now. And we'll still be in the same situation 100 years from now. So, as always, man, we have got to start standing for something, or we're going to keep falling for anything.